cover Python variables. How can we create these? How can we change them once we make them? We'll dive into this and also data types in this video. To get started, I've pulled up a text editor. The first thing that we need to do to create a variable is to create a variable name. A variable must start with either an underscore or a letter that can be upper or lowercase. So for our first one, let's just use variable1. Now to give this variable a value, we type in equals and then we type in the value that we want to give it. This can be a number, a float number, or a string. Let's type in string. Let's create a couple more variables to see what we can do. So variable2 equals 5. And then let's say variable3 equals 5.5. Unlike other coding languages, when we create a variable in Python, we don't have to explicitly state the data type that it is. Since Python doesn't require this, that means we're easily able to change our variables once you create them. Let's go ahead and print one of our variables to the terminal. Variable1. Save your file and then execute your script. To execute your script, remember to pull up your terminal or command prompt and type in Python3 and then the name of your script. We see that we have printed our first variable, and that is just the string that we typed in. Even though we know that this is a string, let's see it printed into the Python console. So let's use the command type, and then we'll pass in the variable that we've created. Execute it again. And we see that we're given the class of a string. We designate a string class by using a delimiter. We can change this quotation to a single quotation mark, save the file, and rerun it. So you can use either the double quotation marks or the single quotation marks to denote your string values. Now let's change this one to variable2, and this one as well. Save the script, rerun. We see that we print 5 to the console and that the class is an integer. Integers are just positive or negative whole numbers. Now let's look at the last variable. So pass in variable3 to both of these functions, save the file, and execute for the last time. We see that 5.5 is returned to us and that the class is a float. A float is any positive or negative number that includes decimal places. So since 5.5 is not a whole number, it is classified as a float. One of the key benefits of Python variables is the ease of changing them. Let's look at how we can do this now. To change a variable, all we have to do is to type in the variable name and assign it a new value. Let's say we want to call this one 5 as a string. We can save the file, and then when we print to the terminal again, we see that we're now given a string class with 5. Since we say variable3 is equal to the string 5 after we say variable3 is equal to 5.5, Python only looks at the latest value. But let's say we type in variable3 with a lowercase v, and then we set this equal to 2. Whenever we execute the script again, we see that we're still given a string class. That's because Python variables are case sensitive, and since this is a lowercase v and this is an uppercase v, they have two different values. Let's look at one more type of data. We can also have a complex variable. So let's say variable4 is equal to 2 plus 5j. Go ahead and drop down and change the two functions, so variable4, and then the same here. Save the file and then execute it again. We see that we're given the class of complex. Complex data types represent a real number here and then an imaginary number with a j component. There's also a couple more data types that we can briefly talk about. Let's go ahead and get rid of this line, and then we'll change this function and put in true. We see that we're given the class of bool. This is just the class for true and false. So if we change this to false, we should expect the same thing to be printed, which it is. Sometimes this presents an issue for us though. Say we wanted our second variable, 5, to be a float number instead of an integer value. We can change this though by saying a new variable, so variable 5 is equal to float and then variable 2. Now when we print the type of variable 5, we should expect a float value. So executing our script, we see that we're given a class of float. Although Python doesn't explicitly make you define your classes, you're always able to define the class that you want for your variable. In the next video, we'll get into composite data types. These are things such as dictionaries, objects, or lists. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to let me know. Until next time.